Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the European Innovation Day 2018. We are halfway through of a conference that has a lot of points of interest. We just went through 3 parallel workshops, and now is when we gather all different groups and we get just a general conversation among each other. So, I'm Marco Marinucci. I'm the founder and CEO of Mind the Bridge. We are an innovation advisory firm based out of San Francisco. I've been around for 12 years, but we have a pretty significant presence in Europe, where we operate with a lot of partners that we see around here. First of all, in fact, I want to give a good welcome for all the people that travel from far. We have a delegation of 50, 60 people, a mix between senior policymakers at the European Commission, the European Parliament, local governments, as well as executives at corporates, plus a group of CEOs of some of the hottest growth stage startups that we selected with a number of partners that are representing the best of the growth hot technologies coming from Europe. And most of them are actually having been entertained with meetings in the rooms with investors. So, the conference of the rest of the afternoon is going to focus on 2 main streams, 2 main pillars. Number one is we want to showcase the best of opportunities, of business opportunities that are happening today between Silicon Valley and Europe. One of the things that we, as an organization, we've been focusing on is really to measure the impact of the innovation economy, and in particular between Europe and US. So one of the things that we're launching today, we're going to talk about it, reference it. We discussed it with a number of players in the morning, but it's really what we call the economy of innovation of Europe here. So we set out, me and my colleagues and our strong research team, really to get a sense of how to measure the impact on this economy of innovation of European entities that are working as a bridge between here and Europe. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to have also some insights from some of the CEOs of those startups that we selected over time. The second piece that is growing on us is also to discuss about topics where the regulatory framework is today dictating the future of digital models. So, for the ones that are being around here, like myself in the last 16 years, you feel that this is a wave that is growing stronger and stronger. And so the impact of regulators into new digital business models is becoming more and more central. I mean, I don't think it's ever getting sexier, but it's definitely a focus of most of the investors and the startups that are starting the new future models today. And that is one of the focus of this week of activities that we are organizing. As part of that will be, the subset of this focus will be in the afternoon over 3 main areas, and we're going to get some very interesting speakers to talk about that. The first one that also was debated this morning, and you probably are sick of emails talking about GDPR compliance. We probably are too, but we want to give a little bit of a view of where GDPR and the data privacy is going. So how is that, becoming the standard that is national, international, and what are the different trends are coming around from that? There's typically regulation actually got started in Europe. The other subtopic that we want to address is the future of ICOs, the future of cryptocurrency, this trend that has been going ballistic ups and ballistically down of raising money through the initial coin offerings. We have coins all around the conference, if you can see here. So that's another subtopic that we want to address. And again, the role of regulation, what's happening. What is happening today in the US was very different from a year ago when we actually were talking about the future of ICOs. And here it feels more like, let's talk about the present and how is the regulatory framework is going to change, and every country has very different directions. The third one is also the impact of technologies, in particular the mobility and the e-mobility for local governments. We have the pleasure to have among us also a number of mayors from a number of cities of Europe, so thanks for coming. We appreciate your presence. One of the topics that we know is as hot as lava today is how to address the last mile in a city. right? And so everything is happening around transportation, electric scooters, and so on and so forth is definitely in our hearts for people like me living in San Francisco try to get around the city, but as in pretty much every other local city or village for the matter. And then again, they're going to address what is the role of the regulators really to help develop a market that is actually sustainable and for the long run. Okay, so with that, I would just to recognize also our partners. This is an activities that we've been doing for now a few years. This is the 4th edition of the model that we call Startup Europe Comes to Silicon Valley. And we want to recognize also the partners that we're working with in this organization. So first of all, Startup Europe is the subset of activities within the European Commission to support entrepreneurship in general. So long-term friends back from 2012 when we started together. The European Commission, as I said, the European Parliament is also represented here from a few Parliament members. And last but not least, EIT Digital, that is actually in part of this ecosystem, very good friends of ours, especially here locally, to help develop that bridges between and among the European community here that we thought was missing. And so we're very proud to be strong partners on that one and really, I think, gather the best of the European community that is sitting today and doing very interesting stuff in Silicon Valley without knowing each other. With that, as is custom of a conference, I also want to recognize our sponsors. Without you guys, the food that you had, the rest of the activities would not be possible. So I want to recognize our sponsors. I'm going to read the list so I'm not forgetting anybody. Dell, Ionit, OneTrust, Oric, Phil Fisher, LDA US Advisors, and Vulamp. Thanks for your support. So let's give them a round of applause. Okay, so the next 5 minutes, I want to give you a little introduction of what we've been doing this week.
The difference between a US entrepreneur and a European entrepreneur is probably self-confidence.
Now, let's get the ball rolling and let's enjoy the European Innovation Day.
Technology is the fundamental thing that drives differentiation. It's not business model.
So I love it. And I think this generation of European entrepreneurs is the best ever.
The digital single market is not just about businesses. It should also benefit consumers.
People's trust is extremely important for all digital businesses.
You have to go out there and make your case. And if you don't make your case, you're not going to get funded.
I'm going to talk just for 10 minutes and give you a quick overview of what we see happening in the global economy, how millennials are affecting it, and I hope to do the unthinkable.
If you want to make money, channel diversity.
The four bigger area of challenge, and you'll see it in all of the recent press, is just how to run a great board.
Right. I've decided not to use PowerPoint because if you have to use PowerPoint at this stage, there's probably very little power and no point.
Women are now ahead in terms of the degrees that they're getting and all the rest of it, but they still can't get ahead in terms of business.
You can overregulate the entrepreneur and kill innovation. You can underregulate and result in chaos.
Policy making today is impacting the future of digital economy.
I want to move to a place where the citizen has a single, easy interaction with government.
The wind is back in Europe's sails.
This conference has become the place where this kind of discussions actually take place. All right, I think if you're here, you register. So this actually was not a recap of what we have been doing this week or what we've been doing, but more of a recap of what we've been discussing in the last few years in these conferences. So some reference that we will be doing over the course of the afternoon will be also as what is the delta that happened between last year, the numbers that we showed last year, and what's happening this year. So first of all, I'm going to give a little bit of an outline of the new report that we just published. I think you have a QR code right here in the back of pass. That it's a way also to download the digital copies of those reports. I'm going to give you just the core of our funding. So Alberto and myself, we've been focusing on really what should we calculate if we want to get a sense of the size of the economy of innovation of European corporates or European entities here. So what we ended up doing is to try to put together the yellow pages of whomever is working in the world of innovation here that has a strategic link with Europe. So, and basically in the idea of the economy, we really wanted to concentrate from the economy of innovation, really from the flow of the money that comes from the initial investors all the way to the startups and anything that helps this very link. So that's what we started doing. We went through all the friends that are here in the room and not, tried to get a sense of who is doing what and really doing this data gathering that we thought was missing. And so as a part of that, you'll find in this report, half of it is actually the yellow pages of that. So you'll find a number of institutions, a number of organizations, a number of consulates, government-related or not, that today are really focusing their activities in this bridge between Europe and here, where innovation is really at the core. So here I'm going to give you just a few highlights of this research. We gather information about 57 corporate outposts. Those are entities that are where the headquarters is in Europe, but they have here at least one full-time person, might be in some co-working space, but whose focus is really to work on innovation, right? So if here as an extension of their sales network, that's not what we care about. So we focus on the 57 corporates that have an headquarters somewhere in Europe and got a sense of how to structure here. Is that through a corporate venture capital? Is that through two persons in a co-working space? Or is that through an R&D center? Or anything in between? So we got 57 of that. Just to get a sense, last year I think when we were showing something similar, we were around 45, so definitely an increase. And we don't say it's very likely we're missing a few, so thanks to give us feedback if you see that some of the partners that you know are not being listed, but I think we're doing a pretty decent job in getting very close to what we think is the real number. Similarly, the other focus that we had is how many companies that have been started as a dual company, as a startup at the beginning. Typically, this is something, again, I've been here in this country and this region for 16 years today. When I came here as a number of international entrepreneurs, and I'm sure Vivek will reference some of that, having a company where most of the development was somewhere else and having the head here that could expand commercially through US with the help and acceleration of Silicon Valley wasn't really the norm. And if it was something that we wanted to, it was very hard to convince all the stakeholders, in particular investors, that was the best way today to build products. I think today, I don't think I'm very wrong in saying, I don't know a single startup that starts from here where all the development is done in-house at the cost and the prices of Silicon Valley. It wouldn't make sense. Right? So you're spammed for it with the same money. If you have a distributed kind of workforce, it's much longer than try to spend everything that you have here locally. And this is a topic of discussion that will be addressed as well. So as a result of that, we're seeing more and more of startups that are getting started as a dual company from day one. So day one is two people. One is on the other side of the world. The other one is somewhere here in Silicon Valley. So we're going to go and see what's the result of these companies, how well they're doing or not. And in between, clearly, we have there's a flow also of investment. It's coming at different levels. That's the hardest part to track, clearly, for a number of reasons. But I think we definitely have a good sense of what's the amount of flow of investing that is coming from the top down, either directly to Silicon Valley startups from Europe or through mid-parties, so through as a limited partners of some funds that are here. So we're getting a good sense of how to track that. Again, our trends that are definitely changing over time. Last but not least, this is also part of, sorry, I know I shouldn't touch this. It's part of our core, you've been in our name, bridge organizations. So those are entities that similarly to what we've been doing have been helping this bridge of innovation between Europe and here. And those, typically the ones that are listed here, there are 2 or 3 different categories. One is specifically the ones where the focus is to help this bridging of startups from Europe to here. As part of that, there's also a larger group of entities, typically are government supported, Chamber of Commerce's, a part of the consulate activities to support the economy, where the startup part is also a piece of that. They're also listed there, but that's where the division comes. All right, so real quick, those are just some hints. This is specifically on the growing number of unicorns, or what we call the scale-ups that got originated in Europe, but actually they're becoming big here. And so you probably see some familiar names out of this slide. Most of the companies that are there are actually now at the level of unicorn. So you see Zendesk, you see Unity, you see Blipar, and others. So entities that are definitely in the billion-dollar kind of range. We just listed here the top 10 with no real cut, just the top 10 in terms of capital raise, which is one measure. It's probably not the one direct measure of success, but it's definitely one measure that is listed. But the interesting part is here, to see the distribution of it. You can see, definitely that UK, for a number of reasons, has the most of those companies. So clearly the link, the cultural affinity, the language, all the above between UK and US in Silicon Valley in this case is still very strong. So that's the first topic, the first kind of measurement that you find there. Here, that's the second part of subset of organizations that are working in this bridge. A good number of those are actually sitting also outside, so they're there showcasing what they're doing, what is their role. So we got a list here divided by country. So you can see some of them. Again, those are, to recap, those are organizations whose focus is mainly supporting startups as a bridge. If you're doing other activities in support of economic development, they're probably not there. They're in a different list. But it gives you a good sense of who's represented, who's not. Clearly, probably there are a few missing. So let us know if you see that there is a big gap there. Last but not least, this is closer to our business, serving a large number of corporates in their expansion and research of best solutions for their innovation needs. But you get a sense of the number of corporates that from Europe are putting one person or 100 people somewhere to work on getting a sense of where the next wave of disruption will come from. I think they're all realizing that they have no more time left. So that pressure of being on top of things at the core of where this innovation not necessarily gets started, but definitely that's a place still where the innovation gets big. They feel that that's a time that they cannot miss anymore. So you get a good sense. If you see, again, this is a list based on country. There's a very large dichotomy. There are two countries that are getting the big piece of the pie. Their presence, also because their economy to some extent, are more concentrated in larger groups. But France and Germany, by numbers, also visually, as you can see here, they're definitely on top of the pack. What are the industries that are mostly represented? And again, I think here you can draw some conclusions based on things that are changing over time. That is actually very interesting to see. Now we've been doing this for a couple of years. I mean, this gathering of data, and it's very interesting to see how things are changing dramatically from one year to the other. The advancement of the digital part of automotive, as will be shown shortly, I mean, it's clearly in everybody's minds. And so, the world of automotive is turning, far from the mechanics and in anything else. And so every single automotive producer today do have here at least one or two people or 100 or 50 that are investing or either in startups or trying to get a sense of what's coming over them, not after them. And then you can see a concentration of other subsets, but definitely what sticks out is automotive. This is going to leave you with that. This is definitely the point of this discussion. More than half of the entities of the corporates that we've been looking at were not here in 2004. So everything, this wave of accelerated presence here is something that is by all means getting faster and faster. And I think this is a translation of what's happening in the world and all the different industries around the world, where really technology and innovation are becoming by far the driver of the next wave of the new winners will come from. And so this is the, from the chart on top. From the bottom, this is gives you another good sense. We've been talking about open innovation. You've been hearing about open innovation inside and out. And the bottom line of open innovation is what are the processes that can work today to bring this innovation from outside in? Translate it, make sense, and translate it in terms that the corporate per se can integrate in their modus operandi today. And those are just 4 of different implementation of that based on the research that we have, at least for the corporates that we have tracked. Some are R&D centers. It's something that it used to be hot and the way to come here, the SAP of the world. So having a large, R&D center that would build stuff. This is becoming, less of the trend. What the more recent trend is more to have the innovation antenna or an innovation lab. To have 1, 2 people or 10 people that are working on the first prototypes from the industry, integrating with the startups that are doing things that have an interesting solution for that. With that, I think I'm going to leave it here. So thanks so much. I'm going to introduce the next speaker. Thank you.